Attention, attention. Nelson Ho Piquet loses control. Heavy crash. Heavy crash. Safety car on track. This changes everything in the race. It was lap 14. Massa's Ferrari was sharp, strategic, fast. A world title for Brazil didn't just look possible, it looked likely. But that crash, which we only learned years later was deliberate, opened the door to full strategic chaos. Massa's pit stop disaster, leaving with the fuel hose still attached, became the symbol of a championship slipping away. At the finish line, it was Lewis Hamilton who raised his hands, crowned world champion.
But that moment, supposedly buried in the dust of history, has just resurfaced with full force. And truth be told, for the first time, there is a real, truly real legal possibility of rewriting who the champion of that season actually was. The case is active, alive, and hotter than ever. And before we get to the decisive point, take a breath, because you're about to understand why the name Felipe Massa is echoing through the halls of the FIA again. If you follow Formula One and want to stay one step ahead, especially when it comes to scandals, investigations, and decisions that can rewrite the sport's history, hit subscribe right now. No fluff here. When something shakes behind the scenes, you'll hear it first. Subscribe and stay with us through this wild storyline. This story begins with an old ghost that has haunted Formula One for more than 15 years. A ghost born on a hot night in Singapore in 2008, when the championship looked firmly in Felipe Massa's hands, until everything turned to smoke in the most unexpected corner. Behind the scenes, the infamous Crashgate became a symbol of institutional embarrassment. A deliberately manipulated race, orchestrated inside the Renault garage, that completely altered the flow of that Grand Prix. Drivers, engineers, team bosses, everyone, in one way or another, still feels the weight of that decision that was never undone. But now, in 2025, the game has changed. Documents, statements, omissions and old comments from powerful people have reignited the debate. The lawsuit filed by Felipe Massa is not symbolic, not emotional, not a late complaint. It's legal, direct, and it hits the core of the FIA's credibility. And in this video, we're going to break down what the lawsuit actually says, why it exploded this season, how former drivers are reacting, what Hamilton said even while trying to dodge the subject, and the current scenario that has many believing that this time, the ending could be completely different from what we saw in 2008. The lawsuit didn't appear overnight. It grew slowly, fed by contradictions that the FIA tried, for years, to sweep under the rug. Back in 2008, when the Crashgate scandal finally exploded publicly, the world was shocked. But the fallout was strangely incomplete. Piquet's confession came, punishments were handed out, scandals erupted inside Renault, but a crucial detail was left untouched: the result of the race. Singapore 2008 stayed exactly as it was. No points were changed. No positions were reviewed. No titles were questioned. And that was the decision that kept Hamilton as champion and left Massa 1 point behind. For many fans, that was the end of the story. For the FIA, it was case closed. But behind the scenes, drivers, engineers, and even former FIA officials began to whisper a different truth. The organization knew what had happened long before the official announcement. That detail, the alleged early knowledge, is the true dynamite in Massa's hands today. Over the years, the pattern became clearer. Key names from the sport admitted, in interviews or leaked emails, that the FIA might have been aware of the manipulation during that same season, and chose to remain silent to protect the sport. Those three words, protect the sport, now sit at the center of a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Because if the FIA really knew before the end of the championship, then the legal argument is brutal. The 2008 result should not have been validated. That's the foundation of Massa's case. Not emotion. Not nostalgia. A procedural breach in the heart of the most politically complex sport on earth. And this lawsuit is not a symbolic gesture. It has backing from lawyers specialized in sports governance, a mountain of documents being re-examined, and a global audience suddenly paying close attention. The tension is rising inside the FIA corridors, even if they don't admit it publicly. The question that now echoes through the paddock is simple. What happens if Massa is right? Before we go any deeper, hit the subscribe button and stay close. This channel is here to expose the stories Formula One tries to bury under layers of shiny marketing and political silence. If you want to understand the truth behind the 2008 scandal, not the version polished by press releases, but the one that still shakes the paddock today, then subscribe now and stay until the end. We're only just opening the first page of a story that could rewrite a world championship. Felipe Massa didn't rush into this fight. For years, he carried the weight of that night in Singapore like a closed wound, one that never healed, one that the world kept pretending wasn't there. But in 2023, something finally snapped. A series of statements from former F1 executives resurfaced, revealing that the sport knew about the manipulated crash before the season had officially ended. And that was the crack Massa needed. His legal team filed a case arguing that the FIA had a responsibility. If the sport discovered a race result had been artificially influenced, it should have acted immediately. Instead, the information was buried until the following season, locking the championship standings forever, even though the core of the controversy was already known behind closed doors. From the moment the lawsuit was announced, the paddock reacted like someone had thrown a lit match into a garage soaked in fuel. Some drivers quietly supported Massa, acknowledging that the 2008 title was shaped by something far removed from fair competition. Others rolled their eyes, insisting that reopening championships would create chaos, rewriting decades of history and setting dangerous precedents. But the truth is this: none of them can ignore the impact of that night anymore. Every hearing, every document revealed since the case began has added pressure on the FIA. And now, the situation has reached a point where the governing body can no longer pretend it's just an old controversy. The legal storm is alive, it's growing, and for the first time in 16 years, the 2008 title feels unstable. For years, the Crashgate scandal felt like an open wound the sport refused to touch. Everyone knew what had happened in Singapore 2008, the orchestrated crash, the manipulated strategy, the title slipping away. But Formula One treated it like a family secret, acknowledged, then buried under layers of moving forward. Everything changed when Felipe Massa decided he'd had enough of silence. His legal team began digging through old communications, FIA statements, and timelines that didn't quite add up. The key discovery was a simple, explosive fact: officials inside the FIA already suspected the crash was intentional during the 2008 season, but chose not to act to avoid damaging the sport. That sentence, damaging the sport, became the spark of a legal firestorm. From that point, things escalated quickly. Several former drivers publicly supported Massa, arguing that a manipulated race should never decide a championship. Others said reopening results would set a dangerous precedent. And between these two sides, a third group emerged, those who believed that if the FIA truly withheld crucial information, then Massa had every right to fight for justice. Meanwhile, the case began to move quietly but steadily through the legal channels. Requests for documentation. Hearings behind closed doors. International lawyers examining whether the FIA could be held responsible for not acting at the time. One by one, pieces of this puzzle started falling into place. That's when a specific document entered the conversation. One Massa's lawyers claim is the cornerstone of their argument. While we can't reveal its contents here, this document sparked speculation across the paddock, suggesting that the direction of the case might be shifting. Teams started paying attention. Commentators began revisiting the 2008 finale. Fans wondered whether history could actually be rewritten. What we can say is this: something has changed. Something significant enough to put pressure on the FIA and make even the most skeptical analysts admit the same thing. This fight is no longer symbolic. It's real. And the outcome is closer than anyone imagined. Before we move on, if you're still here following every twist of this unbelievable story, you're exactly the kind of fan this channel was made for. So take a second and hit that subscribe button. The world of Formula One is changing fast, scandals resurfacing, titles being questioned, and decisions happening behind closed doors, and you deserve to understand what's really going on, not just the surface version. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next updates, because what comes next in Massa's case is something no one in the paddock expected, and it might reshape the sport in a way we haven't seen in decades. As Massa's legal battle gained traction, something fascinating started to happen inside the paddock. The silence that once surrounded the 2008 controversy began to crack. Former engineers, team insiders, and even past FIA officials quietly acknowledged, sometimes between the lines, sometimes directly, that the Singapore Grand Prix had been a turning point the sport never fully repaired. The core of Massa's argument is simple: if the FIA had acted when it should have, the race would have been invalidated and the championship points re-evaluated. And buried inside those documents, those old reports, those post-race communications, lies the detail everyone keeps circling back to: the FIA had enough information to investigate long before the truth became public. And that is the fracture point. Because once you admit the timeline could have been different, everything else collapses like a house of cards. Lawyers started digging into emails, statements, and procedures. The question stopped being, did Crashgate happen? That was already proven, and shifted to the far more explosive one: did the governing body fail its duty to protect the integrity of the championship? Behind the scenes, the mood is strangely tense. Some drivers support Massa's fight, saying justice, even delayed justice, matters. Others whispered that reopening championships sets a dangerous precedent, one that could unravel decades of results. But even they admit something uncomfortable: Massa wasn't just a victim of bad luck. He was a victim of a system that chose convenience over fairness. And this is where things take an unexpected turn. Because external pressure began to rise. Fans called for answers. Journalists asked sharper questions. Legal experts pointed out inconsistencies. What started as a lonely battle suddenly turned into a movement, not just for Massa, but for the credibility of Formula One itself. And while the FIA remained publicly calm, behind the curtain, the walls were shaking. Documents were reviewed. Statements were re-examined. A panel was assembled quietly, with the explicit goal of evaluating whether Massa's claim had legal standing not just emotionally, but procedurally. That brings us to the moment we're approaching now, the moment when all the years of silence, all the unanswered doubts, all the missed opportunities, finally converge. Because for the first time since 2008, something happened that changes the tone of the entire case. And that's exactly what we're about to reveal. And trust me on this, the final update of today's video is something fans never expected to hear. It's the kind of development that forces everyone, drivers, teams, the FIA, and especially Hamilton supporters, to rethink what the word champion really means. Hit subscribe, stay with us, and let's go to the final piece of this story, the part no one thought would arrive. And now, the update that is shaking the F1 world this week. Felipe Massa's case, once treated as a distant, almost symbolic fight, has reached a stage that no one, not even the FIA, can ignore anymore. After months of hearings, exchanged documents, testimony reviews, and a growing pressure wave from fans, journalists, and even former drivers, the process has officially entered its final phase. Not the rumors. Not the speculation. The formal, procedural, official final phase. For the first time since this entire legal storm began, the FIA's legal department has acknowledged that the evidence presented, including the statements confirming deliberate interference in the 2008 Singapore GP, is being analyzed under what they call championship impact assessment. In F1 language, that means one thing: they are evaluating whether the outcome of the 2008 championship was compromised to a degree that justifies corrective measures. No, there is no final ruling yet. No document naming a new champion. But the tone inside the FIA has changed. Sources close to the process describe the atmosphere as tense, sensitive, and historically delicate, because the possibility, even the theoretical possibility, of revisiting a world title is unprecedented. And this is where the shockwave comes in. The procedural shift announced today sparked an immediate reaction online. Many fans interpreted the move as the beginning of the end, the moment when Felipe Massa's long fight finally turns into recognition and potentially into a rewritten championship table. Social media exploded with images of Massa lifting a trophy, tributes from Brazilian fans, and headlines celebrating what they believe to be the new champion. That perception is what's driving the frenzy. The visual narrative. The emotional weight. The sense that justice is finally knocking on the FIA's door. Whether it becomes reality or not, the fact is undeniable: this is the closest Felipe Massa has ever been to changing the official history of Formula One. What happens next? Will the FIA make the boldest decision in its history, or will it retreat into the safety of precedent? As always, stay with us. Leave a comment. Do you believe the title should be reassigned? Or is rewriting history too dangerous for the sport? Subscribe, like, share, and prepare yourself. The next chapter might be the one nobody thought the world would ever see.